Some of you have reached out asking for some additional guidance on dihybrid crosses. This is happening for many reasons. One, people have been away from it for a little while and they want a quick refresher. Other people were absent during the time that we actually covered this in class and have had a hard time catching up since then. So let's just go over the most standard version of a dihybrid cross, what we would consider to be a true dihybrid cross. A true dihybrid cross is when we have two individuals that are crossing that are heterozygotes for each gene that you are studying. So in this practice problem, and just to clarify where this practice problem is coming from, this was the Punnett Square practice worksheet that you had completed prior to going on break. Okay, so it is problem number 5 that we're looking at. So in this problem, there is a cross between two parents. Both have alleles for the dominant allele for straight hair and the recessive allele for curly hair, and then the dominant allele for blonde hair and the recessive allele for red hair. So both parents are showing straight blonde hair. Both parents have the ability to pass on a variety of different genetic traits to their offspring. So let's break this down. What can the mother, the first one that we're going to write down, what can she pass on to her offspring? Well, she can pass on a capital S, so a dominant allele for the blonde hair, for the straight hair, and then a dominant allele for blonde. She could pass on straight hair, that would be red. She could also pass on curly hair, that would be blonde, or curly hair, that would be red. Now, since the dad has the exact same genetic makeup as the mother, he will also be equally likely to pass on those characteristics. So again, he could pass on straight blonde hair, straight red hair, curly blonde hair, or curly red hair. So we're going to complete the rest of this. A few rules to keep in mind. One, we're going to put the S's first and then the B's, more because that's how this particular problem is written out. Usually what happens is that the alleles are listed in alphabetical order. Probably the author of this document chose to put the S's first and the B's second so that it didn't spell out anything inappropriate for this particular example. And the other thing is we keep the alleles together. So the alleles that belong to the same gene, they stay together. And we list them out in capital and then lowercase order. So if there's a capital, then we're going to list that first, and then the lowercase will follow it for the same gene. All right, so to fill this out then for this first one, we're going to put down capital S, capital S, capital B, capital B. We're just combining what each parent is offering. For the second one, they both are donating the dominant allele for straight hair. The dad is donating a blonde hair allele while the mom is donating the red-haired allele. That individual would be straight and blonde like their parents, but wouldn't be exactly genetically identical to either parent. For the next one, we're going to have a dominant allele for straight hair from dad, and then a curly hair allele for mom, and then both will be donating the blonde hair allele. And then in the final one, it's going to be straight from dad, curly from mom, blonde from dad, and curly from mom, and this individual will actually phenotypically be identical to both parents, and genotypically as well. All right, through the magic of technology, we're just going to go ahead and do a really quick fill out the rest of this. Oh, that's not as magical as I was hoping for. Hold on one second. Quickly fix that for you. All right, there we go. Okay, so now we have everything listed, what the results should have been. One of the things that I am not a super fan of with dihybrid crosses is having to list out all of the genotypes, because typically if it's a true dihybrid, you're going to see there's tons of different genotypes that it possibly could be, and really on a quiz question, it's always going to narrow it down and ask something like, how many of the individuals in the, in the predicted Punnett square would be, and it would give you an example like homozygous dominant for both characteristics. How many would be homozygous recessive for both characteristics? How many individuals would be heterozygotes for both characteristics? So you'd be looking at very, very specific data instead of having to list out everything. This particular assignment asks you to identify all of the phenotype and genotype ratios. So again, as a reminder, a genotype is just showing us what the allele makeup is, right? This is where we're dealing with the capital and lowercase letters. The phenotype indicates what that organism should look like based on the genotype that they have. Now, true genetics is more complicated than just what your genes are telling you. Your environment plays a huge role, and other factors that are at work in your body play a role in what you are physically going to look like. But for straight Mendelian genetics, we just look at what's the genotype, what should that physically look like, not taking into consideration all those other factors. So to do this next part, I went through and I looked at all of the different possible combinations and then just listed them out. Here's what you would do if you had to do the actual ratios. Just go through and count. So for this first one, this big S, big S, big B, I'm just looking on here and I'm going to just put a tally mark next to the ones that actually show that. So the next one is the big S, big B, little b, and I'm looking and I'm seeing that is occurring 2 times. The next one, big S, big B, there's 1, 2 times there. The next one is that true heterozygotes, the ones that are going to look just like their parents. Those are easy to find. They're right on the diagonal here. There's 4 of those. The next one, big S, little b. There is 1 of those right there. Big S, little b. It's like a never-ending scavenger hunt. Little s, big B. Big B would be just 1. Almost done. Little s, big B, little b, there's 2. And then finally, there's only 1 of these. So again, on a quiz or a formal assessment, the questions that you'd be asked would be more related to, specifics of this, like find something that's going to be heterozygote for the straightness of hair and then homozygous for like red hair. It would ask you something like that. All right, something that you will be asked, however, is phenotypes, because those are a bit easier to discover. So how many of these individuals would be predicted to have straight blonde hair? In order to meet those requirements, the individual has to have an allele for dominant on both genes. Now, it only has to carry 1 to show the dominant characteristic, so we're going to just look for something that has a capital S and a capital B, and that will qualify. I'm going to highlight those in yellow, so straight blonde will be yellow. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there will be 9 individuals that will show that dominant phenotype. Looking at straight red hair, I'm going to just change up my color here. To have straight red hair, you're going to need to have a dominant, so a dominant S, but you're going to have 2 recessive Bs. So I'm looking for something that's dominant in the S and recessive in the Bs. So there's 1 there, 2, 3. So I have 3. Now for curly blonde, I'm going to have 2 recessive alleles for curly, and then I'm going to have a capital for the blonde. I have 1 there, 2 there, and 3 there. And then finally curly and red, I have to have recessive on both. So there's my 1 recessive down there. Okay, something that I emphasized in class, this is a true dihybrid cross. What's really awesome about that is anytime you have simple dominant and recessiveness at play, all you need to do is to memorize the ratio, the phenotype ratios, because that's going to help you actually solve most of the problems that you're going to be asked. So if we look at this kind of what looks like a complicated dihybrid cross, but we just can remember that the dominant trait will occur 9 times for the phenotype, that the dominant recessive trait will happen 3 times, the recessive dominant trait will happen 3 times, and then the recessive recessive will happen 1 time. That 9 to 3 to 3 to 1 ratio will happen all of the time. Again, if you are struggling with this concept and need some additional guidance on a specific question, please don't hesitate to reach out and we'll work out a solution online.